The conference room held 200 people, and not one of them breathed. Claire Anderson stood at the podium in a navy suit, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade. If I discover that anyone has been deliberately spreading false information about a colleague, that person will be terminated immediately. No warnings, no second chances. In the back row, Ethan Brooks sat motionless, his hands folded in his lap, his face betraying nothing. 3 rows ahead, Mark Reynolds had gone pale as ash, his leg bouncing beneath the table in a rhythm that screamed guilt. Claire's gaze swept the room, landing briefly on Ethan before moving on. What happened in this company will never happen again. I give you my word. 1 week earlier, everything had been different. The apartment smelled like pancakes and maple syrup. Ethan stood at the stove in a worn t-shirt, flipping batter with the practiced ease of a man who had done this 1,000 mornings before. On the kitchen table sat a stack of bills, the one marked Rent, $850 or circled in red ink. On the wall hung a photograph, Ethan in a tuxedo, a woman with warm brown eyes in a white dress, and between them, a baby wrapped in pink. Tyler padded into the kitchen, 7 years old, small for his age, his curly hair sticking up in every direction. He climbed onto a stool and placed a drawing pad on the counter, his gap-toothed grin still soft with sleep. "Dad, can I bring my drawing to school today?" Ethan glanced over his shoulder. "Which one, buddy?" Tyler held up the paper. 2 stick figures stood in front of a lopsided house, one tall and one small, both with wide smiles. Above them, in wobbly crayon letters, "Me and Dad." Something tightened in Ethan's chest. He set down the spatula and crouched beside his son, pulling him into a hug that said everything words couldn't. "That's us, buddy. Always will be." Denise had been gone 4 years now. Car accident on Route 9, a Tuesday afternoon. A drunk driver who walked away without a scratch. Some days Tyler looked so much like her that Ethan forgot how to breathe. The same eyes, the same stubborn chin, the same way his nose scrunched when he laughed. He had learned to carry the grief quietly, to let it fuel him instead of break him. He had to. For Tyler. At 6:15, the sky still gray with dawn, Ethan carried his drowsy son to Mrs. Callahan's house next door. She answered in a housecoat. 70 years old with silver hair and the kind of eyes that had seen enough of life to understand it. "Early again, Ethan. Financial audit presentation today. Big one." She shook her head, taking Tyler's hand. "You work too hard, honey. That boy needs his father rested." A tired smile crossed his face. "The bills don't care if I'm rested, Mrs. C. They just care if they get paid." Tyler wrapped his arms around Ethan's legs, his voice muffled against his father's jeans. "I miss you when you're at work, Dad." The words landed somewhere deep. Ethan knelt, eye level with his son, and pressed a kiss to his forehead. "I miss you too, buddy. Every single minute." He stood, forcing brightness into his voice. "Pancakes for dinner tonight. Deal?" Tyler's face lit up. "Promise?" "Promise." The Honda Civic wheezed to life on the 3rd try, its engine coughing like an old man with a cold. Ethan navigated through morning traffic with his laptop open on the passenger seat, the screen glowing with numbers that didn't add up. Q3 financial audit, discrepancy, 2.3 million unaccounted. He had found it 3 weeks ago, buried in the marketing budget like a splinter someone hoped would go unnoticed. He had reported it to his supervisor, quietly, professionally. What he hadn't known was that the money trail led somewhere it wasn't supposed to go. His phone buzzed, a message from Tyler sent through Mrs. Callahan's phone. Love you, Dad, followed by a heart emoji and a dinosaur. Ethan smiled, his thumb moving across the screen. I miss you. He hit send before his brain registered the error. The message whooshed away, and then he saw the name at the top of the thread, Claire Anderson, CEO. His blood turned to ice. He jabbed at the screen, trying to unsend, to delete, to undo. But beneath his message, a single word appeared like a death sentence. Scene. 45 minutes later, Ethan sat at his desk on the 14th floor, staring at a spreadsheet he couldn't focus on. The office hummed with its usual Monday rhythm, keyboards clicking, phones ringing, coffee machines gurgling. But beneath the ordinary sounds, he could feel something building. A tension. A waiting. The elevator chimed. Every head turned as Claire Anderson stepped onto the floor. She wore charcoal gray, her dark hair pulled back so tight it seemed to sharpen her cheekbones into weapons. She walked like someone who had never heard the word no, each step deliberate, measured, the click of her heels silencing every conversation in her path. She stopped at Ethan's desk. The entire floor went still. No typing, no breathing. Just the hum of the air conditioning and the thunder of his own pulse. She leaned down, close enough that he could smell her perfume, something expensive and cold, like winter bottled and sold to people who could afford it. Her eyes were gray, unreadable, 2 chips of ice that gave nothing away. Say it again. His fingers froze over the keyboard. Every muscle in his body locked. He forced himself to meet her gaze, to not look away like every instinct screamed at him to do. Miss Anderson, that message wasn't meant for you. It was for my son. I apologize. It was a mistake. She straightened slowly, adjusting the cuff of her sleeve with deliberate precision. Her expression didn't change, didn't soften, didn't harden, just stayed perfectly, terrifyingly neutral. A mistake. The word hung in the air between them. She glanced at his phone, face down on the desk now, then back at him. Something flickered behind her eyes, too fast to name. Interesting. She turned and walked away without another word. The click of her heels faded down the hall, and then her office door closed with a sound like a cell slamming shut. Ethan exhaled. His hands were shaking. By lunch, the whispers had metastasized. He heard them in the break room, saw them in the sidelong glances that followed him through the cubicle maze. The story had already mutated. He had confessed his feelings to the CEO. He was having an affair. He was angling for a promotion through unconventional means, each version more absurd than the last, and each one spreading faster than he could deny it. Mark Reynolds cornered him near the coffee machine, arms crossed, a smirk carved into his sharp features. 32 years old, always overdressed for his position, with the kind of confidence that came from knowing the right people. Well, the janitor finally got noticed. Ethan poured his coffee without looking up. I'm a financial analyst, same as you. Sure you are. Mark's smirk widened. But I didn't get hired because of diversity quotas. He lowered his voice, leaning closer. What did you send her? A love letter? Or just begging for scraps from the big table? 3 colleagues stood nearby, eyes averted, mouths shut. None of them spoke. Ethan turned, meeting Mark's gaze directly. I sent the wrong text. It happens. Right. An accident. Mark winked at his audience. Some of us earn our positions here. We don't network after hours, if you know what I mean. Ethan took his coffee and walked away. Mark's laughter followed him like a shadow with teeth. The team meeting at 2 o'clock, should have been routine. Mark stood at the front of the room, clicking through Q3 projections with practiced smoothness, his voice dripping with confidence. As you can see, marketing ROI increased 15%, demonstrating the success of our strategic partnership allocations. Ethan watched the numbers scroll past. Something nagged at him, a splinter in his mind that wouldn't let go. Slide 7. His voice cut through Mark's presentation, calm and even. The $847,000 allocated to strategic partnerships. What vendor does that correspond to? Mark's smile flickered. Partnership development. Standard allocation. The vendor code FP2847 doesn't exist in our system. Ethan let the words settle. I checked twice. Silence. Sarah Chen, the HR director, sat in the corner with her pen frozen over her notepad. Her eyes met Ethan's for just a moment, and something passed between them. Recognition. Warning. Both. Mark cleared his throat. I'll look into it. The meeting ended shortly after. No one mentioned the exchange, but Ethan felt the temperature in the room drop 10 degrees. He had made himself visible in exactly the wrong way. That night, after Tyler had fallen asleep with his dinosaur clutched to his chest, Ethan sat in his car in the dark apartment complex parking lot, laptop glowing. A file had appeared in his inbox an hour ago. No sender name, no subject line, just an attachment. HR Complaints, 2018-2024 XL Essex. He opened it. The numbers hit him like a fist to the chest. 73 complaints filed by employees of color over 6 years. 68 dismissed without investigation. Average resolution time for white employees, 5.2 days. For black employees, 47.3 days. The same phrases repeated like a sick mantra: cultural misunderstanding, oversensitivity, insufficient evidence. He scrolled to the signatures at the bottom of each dismissal. The same name appeared on every single one. Mark Reynolds, HR Liaison. His phone buzzed. Tyler, through Mrs. Callahan. When are you coming home, Dad? Ethan stared at the screen, at the spreadsheet, at the 73 names that represented 73 careers destroyed, 73 families upended, 73 voices silenced by a system designed to protect the people holding the muzzle. He typed back, "Soon, buddy. Love you." Then he closed the laptop, started the car, and drove home through streets that suddenly felt darker than before. Tyler was waiting on the couch, his eyes red and puffy. Ethan dropped his bag and crossed the room, kneeling in front of his son. "What happened, buddy?" Tyler's voice came out broken. "Tommy said his dad told him you're going to get fired. He said black people at your company always get fired." The words hung in the air like poison. Ethan pulled his son close, holding him tight, feeling the small body shake against his chest. "Hey, look at me." He tilted Tyler's chin up. "I'm not going anywhere." "Promise?" The word caught in his throat. For the first time, he wasn't sure he could keep it. But Tyler was looking at him with Denise's eyes, full of trust and fear and something that looked terrifyingly like hope. "I promise I'll always fight for us." He kissed his son's forehead. "That's a promise I'll never break." Later, with Tyler asleep in the next room, Ethan sat at the kitchen table surrounded by bills and silence. He thought about the 73 names, about Mark's smirk, about Claire Anderson's unreadable eyes. He wasn't just fighting for his job anymore. He was fighting for everyone who had been erased before him, for Tyler, for Denise's memory, for every child who had ever been told their parent wasn't good enough. He opened his laptop, pulled up the file. and whispered 3 words into the empty room like a vow. Not this time. The next morning, Ethan pulled into the school parking lot with Tyler unbuckled and ready to bolt. But his son didn't move. He sat frozen, staring through the windshield at a woman in a designer coat who was pulling her child away from the entrance, her lips moving in whispers that carried across the morning air. Tyler's voice came out small. "Dad, Tommy's mom is looking at us weird." Ethan followed his gaze. Mrs. Patterson stood near the school gates, her hand clamped on her son's shoulder, steering him away from the path Tyler would need to walk. When she noticed Ethan watching, she turned her back and hurried Tommy toward the building's side entrance. "Hey." Ethan reached over and squeezed his son's hand. "What happened?" Tyler's chin trembled. "Tommy said his mom told him we're not the right kind of family, that he shouldn't play with me anymore because you're in trouble at work." The words landed like stones dropped into still water, sending ripples through Ethan's chest that he couldn't stop. He killed the engine and got out, circling to Tyler's door. He crouched on the asphalt, eye level with his son, one hand on his small shoulder. "Listen to me. Some people get scared of things they don't understand. They make up stories to feel better about their own fears. That's their problem, not yours." He tilted Tyler's chin up gently. "You walk into that school with your head high. Be the best Tyler you can be. That's all that matters." Tyler nodded, but the light in his eyes had dimmed. Ethan watched him walk through the gates, his backpack too big for his frame, his shoulders hunched like he was bracing for impact. In the car, Ethan dialed Sarah Chen. She answered on the second ring, her voice barely above a whisper. "I can't talk long." "Where did that file come from?" A pause stretched between them. Then, "I don't know what file you mean, Ethan. I never sent anything." He waited. She was choosing her words like someone walking through a minefield. But if someone wanted to investigate vendor code FP2847, they might discover it connects to a Delaware shell company, Reynolds Holdings, LLC, registered under Marx Brothers' name as a silent partner. His grip tightened on the steering wheel. "He's been stealing from the company." "I didn't say that. I'm only saying you should be careful. There are people who have spent 6 years making sure certain truths stay buried. They've had a lot of practice." The line went dead. Ethan stared at the phone, then at the Anderson Corp building rising against the gray sky. Somewhere up there, decisions were being made about his future, about whether he would become another statistic, another name erased from the records. He had 6 days until the board meeting, 6 days to build something that couldn't be ignored. 3 floors above the lobby, Mark Reynolds sat in his corner office with sweat beading at his temples. His phone rang, and he answered with hands that wouldn't stay still. "Mark, I've heard there's a complication with the Q3 audit." The voice belonged to CFO Harrison, a man whose handshake had ended more careers than most people had started. "It's contained, sir. Just a junior analyst who's asking questions above his pay grade." "The one who sent that message to Claire?" "Yes, Ethan Brooks." A long pause. When Harrison spoke again, his voice had dropped to something colder. "Handle it the way we've always handled these situations. I don't need to remind you what's at stake for both of us." Mark opened his desk drawer. Inside sat a thick folder: termination procedures, falsified performance reviews, manufactured complaints, dated and signed. He had used this playbook before. 14 times over 6 years. It had never failed. "He'll be gone by Friday, sir." On the executive floor, Claire Anderson stood at her window, watching the city pulse below. Her assistant had briefed her on the morning's developments, whispers spreading through the building, an HR meeting scheduled for the end of the week, unusual file access from Ethan Brooks' workstation. She should have been concerned about liability exposure, stock fluctuations, board reactions. Instead, she found herself thinking about the way he had met her eyes that first morning. Not with fear, not with the stammering deference she was accustomed to receiving. Something else, something that looked almost like honesty. She opened her laptop and typed his name into the personnel database. 3 years of employment, 87 completed audits, 0 errors. Annual reviews consistently exceeded expectations. A single dependent, Tyler Brooks, age 7. Emergency contact, none listed. Next of kin, deceased. She closed the laptop and picked up her phone. Cancel my afternoon, all of it. Over the next 5 days, Ethan became a ghost at Anderson Corp. He arrived before dawn and left after dark, keeping his head down, drawing no attention. But every night, after Tyler fell asleep clutching his stuffed dinosaur, Ethan transformed his kitchen table into a war room. Maria Gonzalez met him at a diner in Queens, her hands wrapped around coffee that had long gone cold. 50 years old, silver streaking her dark hair, with eyes that had seen too many closed doors. They terminated me 3 weeks after I filed a complaint about Mark's behavior toward female staff. Said I was underperforming. Her voice cracked. I had 12 years of perfect reviews, Ethan. 12 years of showing up early, staying late, doing everything right. None of it mattered. James Washington spoke to him in a parking garage in Brooklyn, checking over his shoulder every few seconds like a man who had learned that walls had ears. They blacklisted me across the entire industry. 3 years without steady work. My wife couldn't take the stress anymore. She left. I lost the house last spring. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. I used to believe that if you worked hard and played by the rules, you'd be okay. This company taught me that was a lie. Priya Sharma met him on a park bench in Jersey City, her toddler playing on the swings nearby, oblivious to the weight of the conversation happening just feet away. I was 7 months pregnant when they let me go, called it a restructuring. No severance, no explanation. Just security, walking me to my car like I was a criminal. She wiped her eyes. My husband had to take a second job. We almost lost our apartment. And for what? Because I asked why a promotion went to someone with half my experience. Each story carved new scars into Ethan's conscience. Each name from that spreadsheet became a face, a family, a life systematically dismantled by people who had never faced consequences. By Thursday night, his folder had grown thick with testimonies, bank records, email chains, and documented patterns stretching back 6 years. Tyler found him at 2 a.m, surrounded by papers, his father's eyes red-rimmed and exhausted. "Dad, why aren't you sleeping?" Ethan looked up, forcing his face into something reassuring. "Just work stuff, buddy. Go back to bed." But Tyler climbed into the chair beside him, his stuffed dinosaur tucked under one arm. "I can help. I'm really good at organizing." Something cracked open in Ethan's chest. He pulled his son close, breathing in the familiar scent of his shampoo, the warmth of his small body. "You know what? You can help. Sort these papers by color. Blue stack for money stuff, yellow for emails, green for names." They worked in silence for an hour, father and son, the only sounds the rustle of papers and the tick of the kitchen clock. Finally, Tyler looked up with serious eyes. "Dad, are you fighting bad guys?" The question hit harder than any of Mark's insults, any of Harrison's threats. Ethan set down his pen and met his son's gaze. "Yeah, buddy, I am." Tyler nodded solemnly. "Good. Mom always said you were the bravest person she ever knew." Ethan's throat tightened. He pulled Tyler into his arms and held him there, memorizing the weight, the trust, the fierce, simple love that asked nothing in return. "I won't let you down, buddy. I swear it." On the 6th morning, Ethan requested a meeting with Claire Anderson. Her assistant looked at him like he had asked to walk on water, but 20 minutes later, he sat across from the most powerful woman in the building with a folder of evidence in his lap. She didn't waste time. "You have 5 minutes, Mr. Brooks." He placed the folder on her desk. "I know about the $2.3 million, Miss Anderson. Reynolds Holdings, LLC, registered in Delaware. The money that was supposed to fund marketing partnerships went to offshore accounts, vacation properties, and luxury purchases instead." Her expression didn't change, but something shifted behind her eyes. "And why are you bringing this to me?" "Because I've spent 3 years watching this company from the inside. I've seen 73 people get silenced for asking inconvenient questions. And I believe you don't know the full extent of what's happening beneath you." He leaned forward slightly. "You see quarterly reports and efficiency metrics. I don't think you see the human cost. The receptionist fired for declining a dinner invitation. The analyst terminated for reporting safety violations. The dozens of employees who lost everything because they had the wrong skin color or asked the wrong questions." Silence stretched between them, heavy and electric. "If what you're saying is true, why haven't you taken this to authorities?" "Because authorities require time. And tomorrow morning, Mark Reynolds is presenting a motion to restructure my department, which would make me conveniently redundant." He paused. "I'm not looking for money or special treatment. I just need the truth to matter to someone with the power to act on it." She rose and walked to the window, her back to him. When she spoke, her voice had changed. Quieter. Less certain. "Leave the documentation with my assistant. I'll review everything tonight." That evening, Claire sat alone in her office, the folder open before her. Page by page, the evidence mounted. Wire transfers, fabricated reviews, testimonies from people whose careers had been methodically destroyed. The same signature on every dismissal. The same coded language. The same pattern, repeated 73 times without consequence. She reached the final document, a memo from 2019 signed by her predecessor, her father, the man whose portrait hung in the lobby, whose name graced the building's cornerstone. He had known. He had allowed this system to flourish under his watch. Her hands trembled as she set the paper down. For 6 years, she had believed she was building something clean. Something worthy of the legacy she had inherited. Now she understood that the foundation itself was rotten. She picked up her phone. "Get me legal, and schedule an emergency board call for tomorrow morning, 7 a.m., no exceptions." The next day, 2 security guards waited at Ethan's desk when he arrived. "Mr. Brooks, HR has requested your presence immediately." The walk to Mark's office felt like a march toward execution. Every eye followed him. Every whisper cut like glass. When he entered the room, Mark sat behind his desk with a smile that never reached his eyes. "Sit down, Ethan. Let's make this quick." The chair was cold. The room smelled like expensive cologne and desperation. "It's come to our attention that you've accessed confidential files without authorization. That's a violation of your employment contract," Section 7, Paragraph 3. Mark slid a document across the desk. Sign this voluntary resignation. 2-week severance. We won't pursue legal action. Ethan looked at the paper but didn't touch it. And if I refuse? Mark's smile widened, but his eyes stayed flat. Then we'll ensure you never work in finance again. We'll blacklist you from every firm in the city. When employers search your name, they'll find stories about the disgruntled employee who tried to extort his CEO. The threat hung in the air like smoke from a fire that had already burned too long. Ethan stood slowly. You've done this before, haven't you? Maria, James, Priya. You gave them this same speech, these same threats. They signed because they had children to feed and bills to pay. He met Mark's gaze without flinching. I have a son, too. A boy who looks at me every night and asks if I'm a good person. I refused to answer that question by telling him I surrendered. He walked toward the door, then turned back. You can try to destroy me, but I've already sent copies of everything to 3 different locations. So when Claire Anderson addresses that board tomorrow, she won't just have my word. She'll have proof of every crime you've committed for 6 years. Mark's face drained of color. You're bluffing. Am I? Ethan walked out. Behind him, he heard Mark scrambling for his phone, his voice rising in panic. But Ethan didn't look back. His hands were shaking, his pulse thundering in his ears. But beneath the fear, something else burned. That night, his phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Brooks, this is Claire Anderson. He gripped the phone tighter. Yes, I've read everything, every document, every testimony, and I believe you. A pause. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., all staff meeting in the main conference room. I need you there. Mark tried to force my resignation this morning. He threatened to blacklist me from the industry. Her voice turned to ice. Mark Reynolds will not be a problem after tomorrow. You have my word. The line went quiet. Then, softer. That text message. The one that started this. It was meant for your son. Yes, Tyler. He's 7. Another pause. Longer this time. You're fortunate, Mr. Brooks, to have someone worth missing. The call ended. Ethan sat in his car, staring at the phone, understanding that everything would change tomorrow. For better or worse, there was no path back to the life he had known before. He typed a message to Tyler, coming home soon. Buddy, love you always. The reply came instantly. A photo of Tyler holding up a new drawing. 2 figures stood before a tall building, one small and one large. Above them, in crooked crayon letters, My Dad the Hero. Ethan stared at the image until his vision blurred. Then he started the engine and drove home through streets that no longer felt quite so dark. The conference room doors opened at exactly 2 o'clock, and Claire Anderson walked in like a verdict arriving. 200 employees sat in rigid silence, their faces a sea of curiosity and dread. In the back row, Ethan kept his hands folded, his expression neutral, his heart hammering against his ribs with enough force to crack bone. Claire reached the podium and surveyed the room. When she spoke, her voice carried to every corner without effort, clear and cold as mountain ice. Thank you all for being here. I've called this meeting to address matters that have come to my attention over the past 7 days. Matters concerning workplace culture, professional conduct, and financial fraud. The word landed like a grenade in still water. Ripples of shock spread through the crowd. 3 rows ahead, Mark Reynolds went rigid in his seat, his knuckles white against his thighs. For 6 years, this company has systematically discriminated against employees of color. 73 complaints filed, 68 dismissed without proper investigation, 14 wrongful terminations executed without documentation. Claire paused, letting the numbers sink in. And $2.3 million embezzled through a shell company registered in Delaware under the name Reynolds Holdings, LLC. Mark shot to his feet. His face flushed crimson. This is absurd. Claire, you cannot seriously... Sit down, Mr. Reynolds. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees, and Mark sat as if his strings had been cut. Claire turned to the screen behind her. The first slide appeared, a bar graph showing complaint resolution rates divided by race. The disparity was stark, undeniable, damning. 91% of complaints from employees of color had been dismissed, 34% from white employees. Let me provide specifics, since I know some of you will require them. The second slide materialized bank statements from Reynolds Holdings, LLC, showing wire transfers totaling $2.3 million over 4 years. Account holder, Thomas Reynolds, listed as a silent partner. The money allocated for strategic marketing partnerships instead funded a vacation property in the Hamptons, an offshore account in the Cayman Islands, and a 30-foot sailboat named, with remarkable irony, Second Chances. No one laughed. No one moved. The third slide appeared. An email chain between Mark, CFO Harrison, and board member Williams. The subject line read, Problematic Employee Removal, Q3 Strategy. Mr. Reynolds and Mr. Harrison are terminated effective immediately. Their computers have been seized by our legal team. The Department of Justice has been notified regarding potential criminal charges. Security officers moved through the aisles. Harrison stood without protest, his face blank, already calculating legal strategies. Mark remained frozen until a guard touched his shoulder. Then he rose on legs that barely held him, his mouth opening and closing without sound. Claire's voice stopped him at the door. Mr. Reynolds, before you leave, I want you to look at the back of this room. Every head turned. 200 pairs of eyes found Ethan like spotlights converging on a single point. Ethan Brooks, financial analyst, 3 years with this company. 87 audits completed with 0 errors. Claire's voice softened by a fraction, though it lost none of its steel. A single father who works 12-hour days so his 7-year-old son can have a future. A man who discovered fraud during a routine audit and chose to act when silence would have been safer. Ethan rose slowly. He didn't know what to do with his hands, so he clasped them in front of him and stood still. Mr. Brooks risked everything to bring this information forward, not for money, not for advancement, but because 73 people deserved someone willing to speak when speaking cost something. Claire's gaze held his across the distance. I owe him an apology for what this company allowed to happen, and I owe him gratitude for trusting me with the truth. She turned slightly, addressing the room again. Mr. Brooks? His voice emerged steadier than he expected, carrying clearly through the silence. I didn't do this for recognition, Miss Anderson. I did it for the people whose names were on that list, for everyone who tried to speak up and got silenced. Their stories mattered. They still matter. Someone in the middle rows began to clap. Then another person joined, and another, until applause filled the room like thunder rolling across an open plain. The entire company rose to their feet, and for one suspended moment, Ethan allowed himself to feel something other than fear. Mark shuffled past him toward the exit, security flanking him on both sides. His eyes found Ethan's, hollow with rage and disbelief. "You destroyed everything I built." Ethan met his gaze without flinching. "No, you built a house on bones, Mark. I just opened the door so everyone could see what was underneath." The doors closed behind him. The applause continued. In the weeks that followed, the story grew beyond Anderson Corp's walls. News crews camped outside the building. The Department of Justice announced investigations into 6 companies connected to Harrison and Williams. 73 former employees received letters offering settlements and reinstatement. Maria Gonzalez accepted a position as Director of Diversity and Inclusion, breaking down in Claire's office when she signed the paperwork. James Washington got a call from a Boston firm that had seen the coverage and wanted to interview him. Priya Sharma used her settlement to start a college fund for her daughter and pay off 3 years of accumulated debt. On a Thursday afternoon, 4 weeks after the meeting, Claire summoned Ethan to her office. No assistant present, no folder of documents, just 2 chairs positioned by the window, facing each other like equals. "The board has approved a new position, Chief Ethics Officer, reporting directly to me." She crossed her legs, her posture relaxed in a way he had never seen before. "I want you to fill it." The offer hung between them, heavy with implication. Ethan studied her face, searching for the ice that had defined their first encounter. It was still there, but tempered now, like steel that had learned to bend. "That's a significant leap from financial analyst. You demonstrated qualifications that can't be taught, courage under pressure, integrity when compromise would have been easier, the ability to see people as more than numbers on a spreadsheet." She paused. "Those are rare commodities in this building." He looked out the window at the city sprawling below, thinking about Tyler's drawings, the bills on his kitchen table, the 7 days that had reshaped his entire existence. "Can I have time to consider?" "Take whatever you need." She hesitated, then added, "I've been thinking about that text message, the one that started everything. The 'I miss you'?" "Yes." Her voice dropped, losing its professional edge. "I built this company because I had no one to miss. No family waiting at home. No small voice asking when I'd be back. Just work." She turned toward the window, her reflection ghost-like in the glass. "You possess something I never learned to want, Mr. Brooks. A reason to leave the office." He stood, moving toward the door, then stopped with his hand on the frame. "It's not too late to learn, Miss Anderson. Nobody's story is finished until they decide it is." She didn't respond, but when he glanced back, something had shifted in her expression, something that looked almost like hope. 6 months later, the park near Ethan's apartment hummed with the sounds of children playing. Tyler sprinted across the grass, chasing a boy with sandy hair and freckles scattered across his nose. "Dad, can Tommy come over for dinner?" Ethan looked toward the parking lot where Mrs. Patterson stood watching. Their eyes met, and she nodded, something like shame flickering across her features before she looked away. "Sure, buddy. Tommy's welcome, any time." Tyler whooped and raced back to his friend. Ethan's phone buzzed in his pocket. A message from Claire. "Board approved expanded ethics budget. $5 million first year. Maria is already implementing new training protocols." He typed back, "Good news. Thanks for pushing it through." Her reply came quickly. "Thank you for proving it was worth fighting for." A pause. Then another message. "How's Tyler?" He snapped a photo of his son mid-jump, arms spread wide, face split by a grin that showed every gap in his teeth, and sent it without caption. The response was a single emoji. A simple, smiley face. He smiled at the screen, knowing what that small gesture meant from someone who had never learned the language of casual warmth. As the sun descended toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose, Ethan and Tyler walked home hand in hand. The apartment building rose before them, modest but solid, light glowing in the windows like small promises kept. "Dad?" "Yeah, buddy." "Are you happy now?" Ethan stopped walking. He looked down at his son, at the gap-toothed smile that echoed Denise so strongly it made his chest ache, at the drawing poking out of his backpack with the words, "My dad the hero," scrawled in crayon. "Yeah, buddy, I really am." They continued in comfortable silence, their shadows stretching long behind them on the pavement. At the door, Tyler tugged his sleeve. "Dad?" "I love you." Ethan crouched down, eye level with his son, and pulled him into a hug that said everything words couldn't reach. "I love you too, buddy. Always have. Always will." Later that night, after homework and dinner and 3 bedtime stories because Tyler had negotiated hard, Ethan sat on the couch with his phone. He scrolled to the message that had started everything, still saved in his archive. "I miss you." 3 words sent to the wrong person, received by exactly who needed to see them. He thought about Denise, about the photograph on the wall, about all the mornings he had stood at that stove making pancakes for their son, carrying her memory in every ordinary moment. He thought about the 73 names, about Maria and James and Priya and everyone else who had been silenced before him, about the system that had tried to erase them and the cracks that had finally let the light through. He thought about Claire Anderson, alone in her corner office, learning for the first time that success meant nothing without someone to share it with. And he thought about Tyler, asleep in the next room, dreaming whatever dreams 7-year-olds dream, trusting that his father would still be there when morning came. 3 words. That was all it had taken. Not to change the world, but to remind him why the world was worth changing. He set the phone aside, closed his eyes, and let himself rest. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new battles, new chances to stand when standing cost something. But tonight, he was home, and that was more than enough.